Welcome back to the Qlik MCP Cordon Green Culinary School of Agentic Awesomeness. This is Chef Qlik Dork, and I hope that you're well rested and caffeinated up out there, all you little sous chefs. The goal of Qlik MCP is to enable your organization to be able to take full advantage of all the APIs that have always been built into QlikSense, but in an agentic and natural language manner rather than requiring programmers. We're going to give you access to everything we've got out there from your applications and data products. The goal of Le Cordon Green is to help you take what Claude would ordinarily prepare and make it extraordinary for you. This is the actual data model for an internal sales application I've constructed. You're absolutely right. I needed a raise. That was not an easy thing to do. Naturally, I just created 1,000 master dimensions, 1,000 master measures, and it's totally up to my end users to try to figure out what in the world they want to do on their sheets. Nah, just kidding. I've built different sheets for those who have different roles or perform different functions to use. A button that says 2025 on one screen is tied to one date field, while on another sheet it relates to a completely different date field. One screen is built to show closed won deals and uses an actual sales value that has currency conversions applied, while another sheet might be related to budget and because it's dealing with pipelines instead. Why do I do this? Clearly, it's to avoid having my end users be scared to death like you were when you saw that data model. I want to shield them from that complexity. When they've needed things, I ask them way more questions than they ever ask me, because each sheet needs to provide exactly what they want, so when they have their simple questions, I can make it simple for them to get the answers from those sheets. When users ask their simple questions of simple data models, the fact that Claude has to make assumptions of which default values to present isn't a big deal. Hey, look, there happens to be one sales field here, and I'm asking about sales. That's the one that Chef Claude chooses when he's talking to Qlik MCP. He just looks so brilliant, doesn't he? But what about my sales model? Well, Qlik MCP knows about all my 54 different sales fields. Chef Claude needs a sales value to choose from. Well, which one is he going to use? Because now his odds greatly decrease that it is going to be the correct one for the user when they ask. Mr. Simple Question Asker completely forgot that when he talked to Chef Qlik Dork, I asked him 10 probing questions back in order to make sure that I built him his super simple answer sheet. Sous chefs, get your pencils out and be ready to take some copious notes. I mean, whatever digital note-taking device you might want to use, because the struggle is real. You could identify an organization-wide skill or a personal skill that said, if there's more than one alternative, show them all to the user and make them pick. But then the user has to wait minutes because their question is likely going to be complicated and involve multiple fields, not just any of the 54 sales value fields, but it can involve 20 different date fields and all kinds of other things as well. In the demo, you're going to see the process from start to finish to help all of this sink in. As always, no microwave here, folks. This course, like all of them, is going to be presented with a lot of love. If you're anything like me as Chef Qlik Dork, you get these questions all the time. I've got a simple question, just give me this number, right? And the asker assumes you're dealing with a very simple data model. They think of quantities, they think of prices, they think of sales, they think of profit, and it's super simple to them. So that would be just like them asking this question of a not so simple data model. In this data model, I actually have 3 sales figures. But in their mind, I just want the sales. I want the sales that my boss is looking for. Now, your applications aren't going to have sales 1, sales 2, sales 3. You're going to have gross sales, adjusted sales, sales just for professional services, sales just for a product line, And you could have 50 versions of sales figures, right? So it would be like them saying, hey, what's the total sales in our not so simple application? Feel free to just default to any sales field you want because I'm just in a hurry to give a number to the boss, right? And we fear this. As we roll out Qlik MCP and Qlik Answers and people ask like this, we've got an issue. They're going to ask questions like that, right? And then we say, oh gosh, you know what? God, there's really extra fields. Ooh, golly, you know what? Now I suddenly remember that sales 2 figure is it's the adjusted sales that I want. So you know what? Create me a personal field so that if I ever ask about sales, I always want you to default to sales field 2. Right? And I showed you this in course 100 about setting your secret sauce to where you could set your defaults. Well, that's fantastic. I've now set that as my default. And if I came and asked that question again, what's the total sales in our not so simple application? This time I'm not going to say, hey, just pick any random field. You notice it's going to follow my personal rule, and it's going to use sales field 2 because maybe I wanted adjusted sales, not gross sales, or whatever the reason might be. Well, let's go ahead and get rid of this rule. We're going to try this a different way because that's a very personal approach, right? All 100 of my users, all 18,000 of my users might need to set that rule then, or they could get crazy answers. Well, I've got a rule set out here. I showed you these personal rules before. Now I want to show you how this rule would apply. I've created this SmartDefault rule that actually says if the applications have a table called SmartDefaults, I want you to use those defaults. That way, in application not so simple, I'm using sales 2 or adjusted sales or gross sales or sales for net new license only. But in super simple app, I have a different sales field. And in another app, I use a different sales field as the default. This rule would be an organizational skill like I showed you in course 120, where I would actually put that there. I am not our Claude organization administrator, so I cannot add rules there. Let me show you in this app what it would be. It's basically just, hey, what's the data type? Is it a dimension? Is it a measure? What's the default type? If I'm asking about sales, or I'm asking about revenue, or I'm asking about profit, or I'm asking about whatever, and what's the default field that should be used? So that is super easy to do. You could do this in any one of your applications. Now that it would be set up as a organizational skill, clearly it was only a personal skill for me, obviously. But once it was, no matter what user comes in there in the future and they say, what is the total sales in our not so simple application? And the assumption is I'm going to use some kind of a default, whether it's Claude's default or whether it's a smart default that has been defined in the application, and they ask that question, it's going to go off and it's going to go through its usual processing. Let me try to figure this out. Let me see if there are fields about sales in that application. Nope, I can't find an exact sales field that you asked about. Ooh, I see that there's actually multiples. Let me check if there's a small defaults table. Oh, yes. Somebody in the organization defined a table that said sales 3 is the default field to use. Now, they may have just hopefully got a quick answer. They were looking for the number. This actually kind of guides them and walks them through. I want you to know I'm going to give you this number, 216,657.13. That is coming from sales 3. Someone in the organization has defined that to be the default, But I've already told you there is sales 1, sales 2, and sales 3. And again, those might be adjusted sales, gross sales, converted to common currency sales, all the things that you could think of in terms of fields. Now your user gets their answer, plus they're helped think a little bit more critically, and you've protected them from having to create their own personal defaults for each and every application, because those things could change across applications.